like to talk about the diagnosis of my teenage daughter's Asperger's syndrome that she got recently diagnosed with at the age of 13. And all in all, it took about over 2 years for the diagnosis to come through, but I'll talk about that another time. What I would like to talk about is, on this occasion, the sort of missing link to what goes on in the system when you're going through a diagnosis such as Asperger's syndrome or similar. So yes, as I was saying, I want to talk about the build up to my daughter's recent diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, and basically the complications I've had and what we've had building up to that. So basically, in a nutshell, my daughter has been going to the same school since she was 2 years old. So she went to the junior school, to the nursery, and then she went to the same school, the high school, and we didn't really have any like problems regarding her Asperger's as much when she was younger. We didn't know she had it because she didn't get the diagnosis till she was 13. Although I did have my inklings that she might have had Asperger's syndrome, and I did take her to get assessed when she was 6, and they didn't follow through with the assessment properly, and the whole thing was very vague, and so it turns out we just carried on with her schooling, and mostly back then when she was younger, I believe that she had more sensory issues regarding things like clothes, sound, and also probably mostly to do with social, regarding things such as going to public places like cafes, built up busy areas. She didn't like that, and she used to sort of have tantrums out of the blue and such things, and other things that I can talk about on a later date. So I think the problems really did happen when she started high school, and so the problem that we had, and I don't know if anybody else has the same problem or has experienced the same thing, but what we've experienced is, because she didn't have an initial diagnosis previous to that, and when she started high school, that's where things started to change. So a couple things happened with her high school where it was a whole new ball game, basically, in terms of hormones kick in, and she became even more introvert than she was before, and she became more quiet and more in her own bubble, so to speak. And then also, because she was different, clever and quiet, she did start to get bullied at school. And then the attendance started to drop because she didn't want to go in, because she was getting bullied, sort of cyber bullied, and name calling and various other things that was happening in her school. So because she didn't have a diagnosis as such, and because she was being bullied, and because the attendance was low, and then it was gradually getting lower and lower to the point where she was barely going in. And so, like, you know, when I think at the mid of year 7, I started taking her to get assessed for Asperger's. But then at the same time, because her attendance was dropping and my daughter was being bullied and that wasn't being acknowledged, it was almost kind of like, I was told by one of the teachers, I will not name the name of this particular teacher, but he was new to the school at the time, and he was supposed to be like put in charge, like the pastoral care. Anyway, yeah, so he was like in charge of looking after Macy and helping her and stuff like that. So what happened was, we were told that she wasn't being bullied because she wasn't attending school, so therefore she's not being bullied. And I was outraged. I was like, how dare you say that to me, and how dare you say that to my daughter, when there's cyberbullying and verbal bullying, and she's undergoing this diagnosis which we do not know the answer for. But I don't want to help you with that. So every time I went into the school to speak to the special education's needs, and every time, you know, they would say yes, they'll do this or they do that, it wouldn't actually happen. It was almost like I felt very threatened by the school because of, well, they called the social or the family services on me, which was fine, and we dealt with that, and we did meetings with them, and it was all to do with, as far as the school were concerned, it was to do with school attendance and the fact that she wasn't being attended, and that I was going to get into trouble or prosecuted or fined or whatever if she doesn't build up the attendance to like full-time attendance, and I was going to get into trouble. And even my daughter was told that that her mom, me, was going to get into trouble if she doesn't start going to school. And I felt very sort of isolated and threatened by the school, like, your daughter's not coming to school, therefore you're a bad parent, and what's happening to your daughter? Is she like locked in the cellar, tied up and not being fed, sort of thing? And you know, they came round my house, the social services came round, and they did their own sort of assessment and tried to help my daughter get back into school. But because she hated it so much, and because of her anxiety to do with things regarding her Asperger's and social interaction and sensory and everything, was becoming more and more intense and more overwhelming, to the point, because of that and because of the bullying and because of her anxiety, she got sort of like depression. So we struggled with that, and I feel like it's almost like you have to have a label and you have to have some kind of diagnosis of something in order to get help. Otherwise you'll get into trouble and you'll have your finger pointed at you, and there's something wrong with you, and you're a bad parent, and why aren't you bringing your daughter into school? And it shouldn't have to be like that. It should be that everybody, whether they have a diagnosis of something or not, everybody should be treated the same, and they should be able to get the help they need. And it shouldn't be a case of protecting the school and the bullies just because of attendance. It should be the other way round. So that's one thing that happened. And and so yeah, we were going through the diagnosis sort of assessment, which took about 2 years to get. Now, this is the crucial thing that I believe that is a problem, probably in the UK and possibly other places in the world, and I want to know if anybody else has experienced this and what they do about it and everything. So the other problem is that during the assessment, at the place where my daughter was being assessed in the Midlands, we had like one in particular sort of child psychologist who was doing most of the assessing, and it's mostly a case of answering questionnaires, ticking boxes, taking notes, and that's it. And it's like one person, and you go into the room and you go in with your daughter, and because my daughter wasn't like communicating with this person verbally, you know, it's very difficult for them to make an assessment. And it is, especially something probably like autism, well, and Asperger's syndrome, because, you know, one of the key things is usually, you know, a communication thing, where so there was a lot of questions to myself and to my daughter. And then, you know, towards the end of that, I was still dealing with this situation that was happening with the school and the school attendance, and like the social and the people were like trying to get involved and trying to get my daughter into school, but it was like pulling teeth. She just didn't want to go. She felt very, very unhappy, and she was starting to feel unhappy anyway because of the whole thing, because of the pressure. There's so much pressure on my daughter and on myself about getting her into school and raising the attendance, or else you're going to get into trouble, basically. In a nutshell, that's what it is. So finally, when I got the diagnosis, a different child psychologist gave it to me, because the woman that we were speaking to for like, you know, a year and a half or so had disappeared because she had to study, and then they just brought somebody else in last minute, a new person who only met my daughter a couple of times before the diagnosis. So basically he got all the information from the other woman, and then they take it to the assessment panel, and then they all have a discussion, even though none of those other people, whoever they are, have met me or my daughter, or as far as I know they haven't, because you never know, people don't say stuff, do they? You know, maybe they have met me, it could be my neighbour for all I know, who's on the panel. They don't tell you stuff like that, and you know, you constantly have to like ask questions. But the biggest thing is when I got the diagnosis for my daughter, the child psychologist called me up on the phone and said, I've just come out of the meeting with the autism panel, and it turns out that we are diagnosing her with Asperger's syndrome. And basically he just said his job was done, and that he put the phone down, he was like bye, and then that was it. So the crucial missing link to the jigsaw here, because it is almost like a jigsaw, it's like a puzzle, and you kind of do feel like you're on your own, you're isolated, and even though you can Google things and talk to people about it and you learn about it, you know, read about it, learn about it, watch YouTube about it, blah blah blah, that's when the child psychologist's job shouldn't be done, and they shouldn't be telling you that that's it, and giving you flyers and leaflets on Asperger's and autism with phone numbers of other like schools and stuff, that's when the door should be open, and that's when they should be doing their full job properly as a child psychologist or somebody who's on the autism professional department needs to come into helping families and people who are going through a diagnosis of whatever it is. And this is where the help needs to be dealt with most of all. When you have been told that your daughter or your son has, or if you're an adult that's been told that you've got Asperger's or whatever it is, the person with the diagnosis and the family should be brought in, sat down and helped with everything under the sun. They should be helped with explaining to your child what it is, helping them understand what they have, and the transition into getting them into the right department so that they can progress with their education, with their life, and whatever it is they need to it's like the help isn't there properly. There's a huge missing link between the school, whether you've been diagnosed or not. There's still something there that needs addressing, it needs helping. And then the link between when you're told you've got Asperger's, what do you do then? What do you do after that? It's like you have to go around like a detective, finding other parents, which I still really haven't found yet, finding other schools, finding people you can talk to and understand that there's hands-on help, which is regular, which is consistent, and to each individual, because everybody's different, and everybody's different with the autistic spectrum, and everybody's different anyway. I mean, I myself am dyspraxic, and I do understand like how much it is a struggle anyway. So I just want to know who else has had to deal with this whole situation with school, where if you haven't got a label on your head, then they don't help you. And even when you do have the label, it's still like squeezing blood out of a stone to get full-on hands-on help. And it's almost like everything is a secret, everything's done behind the closed doors. They're all looking like they're doing work, like, you know, making notes, writing things down and handing you flyers of bits of information that you can find out anyway. But where's the reassurance, the consistent help, and helping you find what's best for you and your family member who has been diagnosed? Where's that link where they say, okay, your son, your daughter has Asperger syndrome or whatever it is, this is what we are going to do, and within this period of time, like within a week or in 2 weeks, you're going to come in to this department and we're going to give you the tools to help you with your Asperger syndrome from now on for the rest of your life, because you know it's something that is an ongoing struggle. So yeah, I would like to hear about other people's experiences regarding school, their diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, or anything else, like, you know, the autism, any other special education needs, at any age, whether you're a child, teenager, adult, because everybody's sort of going through similar things, but it's almost like, you know, everybody's sort of you know, doing similar things, but it's sort of like a thing that's kind of like hidden in a sense, and each person's different. So yeah, so it'll be interesting to find out, you know, how other people deal with it. I mean, this is my experience that's happened to me. I'm in the UK. How do other people in other countries deal with it? When you get told you have a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, what do they do after they tell you? Do they just give you leaflets about it and just say their job is done and put the phone down, or do they continue to help you? Is there some kind of plan, not like a plan set up, an actual plan where they have to help you? Do you get that? Because I didn't get that, and I'm still struggling now, because now she's sort of been taken out of her mainstream school. She goes to this kind of part-time other school, like a sort of special school, but she's still struggling with that. But I'll get into that another day, because that's a different subject. It's like so difficult to get the consistent help that we are looking for. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to leave it there, and let me know your experiences with diagnosis, and maybe you haven't been diagnosed, but you think you have Asperger's syndrome, and the difficulties in school, out of school, and all those sort of things. And also, if you are a parent with a child who may be undergoing a diagnosis or not, and your school are giving you trouble, don't pressurize your child to go into school if they're feeling unhappy there. You have to hang in there, and people do eventually help you in some ways. You just have to take a deep breath and find out what your child needs, because that's who it's about. Their mental health, their feeling that they know somebody is there for them, and that every day, you know, is different. So just, you know, just be there for your child most of all, and don't allow anybody to pressurize you or drag you down into like this sort of, you know, don't let people talk to you in a way where you're wrong, where in fact they're wrong and they should be helping. If they're not helping, you need to get somebody will listen, and somebody does eventually like start to help. It just takes a bit of time, and yeah, that's it. Okay.